Welcome to the Vocation and the Business Leader podcast. I'm Greg Balster. Here we explore how Catholic leaders let Christ and the teachings of the church he founded guide their work, integrating faith and business. Each episode offers inspiring stories to help you live an undivided life. Let's meet our guest, Isaac St. John, owner of Acorn and Oak. Welcome, Isaac.
Thanks, Greg. Awesome to be here today.
Will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so growing up, grew up in a large Catholic family. I'm one of six. Of those large families, we have this kind of tradition in my family that we would field an entire soccer team playing indoor soccer. And then there would be just all of us St. John's on the field running around going crazy together. It was quite the sight. So that was my growing up experience, 5 boys and 1 girl. I tell everyone, don't feel sorry for my sister. She gave me my first black eye and my first chipped tooth so she could hold her own. Growing up through that, we were homeschooled K through 12. That was a really cool experience, especially when it came to sports. I was very into sports. I played soccer at the collegiate level, which really helped determine where I went to colleges, the soccer programs. That just really fed into just being competitive and trying to find ways to do things better, faster. Also, growing up with 6 siblings teaches you that too. But through that progress, graduated from being homeschooled, went into the college system. I went to Madonna University, a small Franciscan Catholic school here in the Metro Detroit area. Loved my time there, in part due to the soccer team. The soccer team was very, very good, and I knew that going. But I really started to discover a lot, go deeper into Franciscan values at the time. I'd grown up Catholic my entire life, loved the church. I was in a really, really powerful youth group through high school. So springing into college, I had a lot of depth, I would say. But I didn't really know too much about Franciscan as its own study, if you will. And so that was hindsight 2020. It was a really great choice that I went Franciscan rather than maybe Jesuit, which both of them wonderful institutions. Just through that process, I discovered that I am much more of a Franciscan mentality, and that spoke to me. Later on in college, I went to Assisi, and that was a really awesome experience too. Going there and just walking those grounds and being part of that atmosphere. I loved Rome. Loved church in Rome, but there was something just very, very special about Assisi. Have you been, Greg?
I have not. That's definitely
And this could be the Franciscan in me coming out. It's one of the most powerful places I think I've been in terms of a faith journey, and just walking up that mountain there and just sitting in prayer. Highly recommend it to anyone, especially if you are Franciscan in nature at all. It gets a 10 for me.
So you were homeschooled all the way through high school?
Yep. I was the only one of my siblings to make it K through 12. I get teased and both have props at the same time. Older siblings went to school. My parents took them out. They wanted to really instill more of that Catholic faith into the curriculum, and they didn't think the school system was doing a good job of that. So my older siblings came and were homeschooled. I was the first one, like I said, went through K through 12. And then my younger brother, he and I are very different, wasn't getting the schoolwork done and wasn't really as self-motivated as I was. And so my parents ended up sending him back to a Catholic high school to finish up, which created this huge uproar in the family because no one else was given that option. And so the baby of the family ended up going back to high school. He was homecoming king, played sports, the whole 9 yards. So he loves to say how great that was and to hold it over us. But I think I got the best deal at K through 12. I studied at my own pace, and that just really worked very well for me.
So as small as Madonna University is, how was it going from, basically 6 people to 2,000?
So, yeah, great question. I'm actually going to pivot that a little bit. So while at home, I was very good at math, and I got ahead in math. So I dual enrolled at the local community college to take math classes and start having college credits before I actually went to college. So my first real college experience was the community college, and it was eye-opening. I came into class not knowing anything about classrooms, really, and just this love for learning, love for numbers, love for math. Come into class the first day, and the first day someone's sleeping in class. And it was just such a mind-blowing, altering juxtaposition from what I was used to of like, you learn because you like to learn. You're interested in the subject matter. There's that passion to excel. And to come into a community college environment where there weren't people who really shared that as a whole, it was groundbreaking. So I had that, and then when I went to Madonna University, it was a little better of experience. Classroom sizes there, I think on average it was like 20 20 students was the average class size for me. So not a large classroom by any means, but for the most part, people did care about their academic career at Madonna. So it wasn't as much of a jump as the community college was out of the gate.
Yeah, yeah. So when you went to Madonna, did you know that you wanted to go into accounting?
No. So at the time, I was working for a Catholic owned travel agency, corporate travel, and I was really intentional about asking the owner, hey, where do you think you need in business? I was trying to decide between marketing and accounting, but I knew business was where I wanted to be. And he had told me that accounting degrees are super valuable and that anyone can learn the marketing aspect, but if you don't actually go to school for the numbers, you're never going to learn them appropriately. So that held a lot of weight to me. I still really hadn't decided, but by year two, by the end of my second year, I knew pretty certainly. I was taking a lot of general classes at the time, general business classes, just to try to decide if I was going to go the marketing route or accounting, and then ended up with accounting, which, and I shouldn't say this in case people from Madonna listen to this, but really didn't love my accounting classes in the grand scheme of business and went through it. Looking back, I appreciate them much more than I did than when I was there. But it just kind of amuses me looking back and thinking, I do accounting for a living right now. And in the business curriculum, they were probably my least favorite classes that I took.
Mhm. Yeah.
Just the subject matter, if you will, isn't always entertaining like it can be in some of the other.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You don't go taking an accounting class to be entertained.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's business law.
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Business law. What you think is ethical, it's the opposite. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah,
remember
I love
that.
my business law classes, but knew I did not want to be a lawyer.
Yeah, yeah. So when you got out, did you go right into accounting, or what did you do?
No, so I was really fortunate. Madonna made me an offer to work there full time on the admissions team, specifically creating admissions around homeschool students. And so that was my goal at the university. And so we ended up creating this awesome, not curriculum, but a path for homeschoolers to have easy access to come to Madonna University, to have scholarships readily available for them when they came. And at the time, that just was not the case inside of the education world. If you were a homeschooler applying to university, you typically had to do double what your public or private school would because the only thing they had to go off of were maybe ACT or SAT scores. And since a lot of institutions at the time weren't recognizing your transcript from home, they'd make you take both just as a matter of course. So one of the things I did is start to accept students based on just one of them with a homeschool transcript and kind of create some structure around this is what a homeschool transcript needs to have in order to be accepted at a collegiate level. So that was cool. Worked with some other universities on that. So not only did Madonna, who again was initiating that program and really reaching out to the homeschool community, but other universities saw that and like, we like this. And so it created this collaboration of, okay, across these 6, 7 universities at the time, we're all going to be willing to say this is how we want to see things and go forward. So it was a cool movement to be a part of and involved with. But yeah, that was my first job actually outside of college, real business card, real benefits,
Hmm.
and some sales goals because it was admission side. So I had to hit certain benchmarks, which was fun and I enjoyed it. But I knew there was just kind of always that voice in the back of your head, when God's speaking to you of you need to move on at some point. And I really wanted to get into accounting just to see if I liked that world as a business. And so after a few years with kind of that sales marketing background role, I did find a job in public accounting and haven't looked back since.
So I see that you were about 12 years in the big accounting firms.
Yep. Yep. I started my career at Baker Tilly. And while I was at Baker Tilly, I was trying to recruit someone from Plant Moran to come work with me because there was this huge signing bonus initiative we had. And after spending a year and a half trying to recruit this person to come work with me, I ended up going over to Plant Moran, which
Uh-huh.
was an absolutely wonderful experience. Can't say enough about my time there. The leadership was wonderful. My team was great. My team partner and mentors, they had structured mentorship built in. It was a really great environment to learn in and move up. Highly recommend it to people. But it also, at the same time, while I'm highly recommending it, it also was very much public accounting.
Uh,
So there was significant workload, super high pressure, which frankly I love, but high pressure to perform. lots of stretch goals and people keeping you accountable to your goals, which is a wonderful thing, but it also creates a lot of stress. And through my time there, I started to climb the ranks at Plant Moran and was starting to look out at what partnership looked like for me. So I was a senior manager there. They've changed the roles a little bit since I left, but while I was there, it was senior manager, and then you stepped into principal, and then the very next role after principal was partner. But when you made principal, you were essentially being guaranteed that, hey, this is just that final step of we're just cleaning up some things and then you're going to be a partner, is kind of how they would pitch it while I was there. So I was right on that cusp of looking at that principal. And through that process, I was talking with people on the management team of Plant Moran, different offices, different states, different team partners, and started to really dig into what does family life look like when you are a partner at Plant Moran. And I started to hear the same line come back over and over. Oh, I make it to all my son's baseball games. Oh, I make it to all my son's soccer games. But it was coming from a lot of different people. And after hearing that 3 or 4 times from different partners, I paused and was like, this is kind of a line that we have here as a firm. And not that the firm promotes that as a line, but that's really what was happening. And for me, and through prayer, success as a father is not about making it to all of your son's baseball games or soccer games, whatever they may be. Like, that's not even ground stakes to me. It's like I could miss some of those games. Am I present in their life? Am I having meaningful impact to bring them and draw them closer to Jesus and the sacraments? And so as I started to really wrestle with that in prayer, it just became more and more apparent of the commitment at Plant Moran. We measured things in 15-minute increments. I could tell you what my day was to 15-minute increments for 10 years. It's crazy, right? It's also really great because it makes you disciplined and you structure things really well and you can manage things pretty well. But I started just adding up all the 15 minutes saying, well, if I do a holy hour every week, where am I going to fit those 4 15-minute blocks in? If I don't work on Sundays, which was always my thing, I never worked a Sunday in my career. It was very uncommon in public to find that. If I don't work Sundays, how do I hit my 55-hour-a-week goal? And then how do we structure all those things around with deals closing, et cetera? And I started just put numbers to paper and say, I really can't be present like I think I'm called to be present to my family. And not that other fathers who are in public aren't doing a great job as a father. It just wasn't my calling to be there. And I thought there was a better way to do it, which really wasn't me. Coming up through a lot of prayer there, and just arriving at that very slowly. I think I was very stubborn. I think it was on my heart for quite a while, and I just kept saying no to God. And even when I first started discussing it, like my wife a number of years earlier had said, oh, you should start your own practice. You'd be really good at that. And I just laughed at her. I was like, that's a horrible idea. I've been here for, a number of years. I have my own team. I hired my team. I have managers. I got a really good thing going. And now looking back, it's like, gosh, so many signs that I should have, and I was just stubborn.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you. So when did you get married?
Yeah, so I got married 6 years ago now, and at the time, I want to say I was a manager at Plant Moran, so I was like 4, maybe 5 years into my time at Plant. And that certainly had a lot of impact as getting married and starting to have kids. My first child, Gabriel, I was still pretty focused on that partner path at Plant. But then when baby number 2, Emma, came, I remember sitting in the office in busy season one week. I just worked almost 80 hours. It was like 78 hours on the week. And I had gone into the office before my kids woke up, and I got home after they'd gone to bed. And I had a whole week that I just really didn't see my kids. And that was a really critical and crucial moment of just saying, gosh, this isn't what it should be. And I know those things, they were kind of one-offs, and that didn't happen every week. It was busy season. I had a huge $250 million deal I was working through. But the reality is they happen a couple times a year in that environment. And so just reflecting on that, that's not what I was being called to do. And so God gave me this idea that, it could be different. Sometimes you just have to, at every time that God's calling, I think he needs us to take that leap of faith of, Jesus, I trust in you, which is funny because I said divine mercy is huge to me. And you say that as part of the divine mercy, Jesus, I trust in you. Jesus, I trust in you. But it's so hard sometimes when it's time to actually just do it. And you're like, Lord, I was pretty convicted. This is what I was being called to. And actually just doing it, like I said, it took me a real long time to do it. And it's that leap of trust of, I was going from a really great over six figures, high six figures, and then leaping into an unknown with nothing and just saying, this is what you want for me, so this is what I have to do, which is crazy. And thankfully it's all worked out. Not thankfully, like providentially it's worked out. But I think that leap of faith to accomplish great things that God has in store for us, we have to take that first leap of faith and that, Jesus, I trust in you. And I almost want to say that's universal. I can't prove that, but I think it is. That's my hypothesis anyways.
So what was your biggest fear on going out by yourself?
All kinds of fears. The brain's really good at creating fears. And that's something that I've learned over the years. My biggest fear was definitely no income. So we crash and burn, we lose the house, we end up on the streets, and I have 2 kids. Like and it's so absurd to say that, right? And here's one of the exercises I do to help myself through when your brain's being irrational is I actually write down worst case scenarios. So I, at one point, wrote that down and then come back to it the next day and you say, oh, is this really the worst case? And then objectively, as I say, no. I'm a CPA. I have years of experience. If this was happening, I could go exactly back to my former role and they would welcome me back. So then I got to that as, okay, this is the worst case scenario is that I come back to Plant Moran. Well, I really liked my time at Plant Moran. It wasn't really a bad thing for me to be there. I just felt called to not be there. And so all of a sudden that really helps too. When the worst case scenario for me became, hey, you might lose a little bit of savings, but then you go back to your former employer. All of a sudden, the worst case didn't seem so bad. Even though those other fears were still rattling around, you're going to end up homeless, you're going to lose your house, et cetera, et cetera. Even though they were rattling around, I had on paper, the worst thing that'll happen is this crashes and burns, and I go back to where I was and just take a hit and have to be humble and say going and starting an own business was wrong. And so, yeah, lots of fear. That was a step that helped me through. Prayer obviously was a huge part of that. And then I left and they were irrational fears.
So how was your first year in business?
It was pretty good. It certainly wasn't the level I was at Plant Moran, but and let's just move income aside. I'm an accountant. I love talking about numbers, but let's put that aside. My first year, I had a prayer time every single day, which was not the reality when I was at Public. And my charge goal was 1,600 hours, and my total hours on the year had to be 2,600. It just didn't happen there. It always felt like there wasn't enough time to squeeze in prayer. And every now and again, I could do it just with the schedule of the day. But that first year of my own, every day I had a prayer time because there was no one expecting me to clock in. There was no one waiting for me. Yes, I had to make sure I was serving my clients really well. But I had this radical idea that, well, prayer helps business, helps me serve my clients. So it's in everyone's best interest for me to be praying.
Yeah.
And so like having that shift and then being able to have that prayer time, that was a huge thing. I was present. I did lunch with my kids every day my first year. And it wasn't a 15-minute lunch of, okay, I'm just trying to help out for a minute. It was an hour lunch with both of my kids. I always did bedtime. That was kind of another non-negotiable as I do night prayer with them, put them down to bed. And those things, when I was in Public, really stressed me out. And on my own, it was just so freeing that I was leading my vocation and it was built into the business. My business is here to support this as my vocation, which was super cool. Yeah. So the first year was great, maybe not from a dollar standpoint, but from all the other intangibles and where I think I needed to be and what I needed to be doing as a father. The first year was amazing.
So how did you come up with the name Acorn and Oak?
I knew I wanted to be named something other than my own name, right? You see a lot of CPAs, they start the business Isaac St. John CPA or John Doe CPA, and that's all well and good. But I knew as just part of a larger calling that I was being called to grow something that wasn't really about me. It's about making an integrated prayer life, an integrated family life, something that's available in public accounting. And to do that, I didn't want people to come work for Isaac St. John. I wanted them to come work for somewhere that it was just a culture, a company, a way of life of we're doing something really radically different in the accounting world. And if you're a parent, if you're really strong and want to, or not even really strong, if you want to grow in your faith, we're a firm that supports that. And so I knew it couldn't be my name. And then I don't know how I stumbled on Acorn and Oak. I ran lists. I'm a big list and checklist person. So I had a whole bunch of names I liked and I would combine things. And when I hit Acorn and Oak, I loved kind of that metaphor of growth of, okay, we can grow from being something small to something large. My clients can be small to large. And I thought that was a really beautiful and compelling metaphor. And pretty much as soon as I hit it and had that thought, it was locked in. Like all the other names fell to the wayside and it was, this is going to be Acorn and Oak. It's not about me. It's about helping everyone grow together. And yeah, so that was the deal.
So, what are the different areas that you specialize in?
Tax is where I've spent my entire career. So tax as a general umbrella. Inside of tax, I got a ton of depth. Anything that has real estate in it, done a lot in real estate. I've done a lot with franchise teams. That was part of the practice I developed for Plant Moran as their franchise practice. So I've seen a lot of different franchise concepts, which are really fun to work with. And now on my own, I'm doing a lot more of these closely held family service businesses. Starting to get into that a lot more, which was another part of the shift of Plant Moran as a firm was moving really towards serving private equity. And one of the things I love was just serving those family run businesses because you can have so much more impact than just taxes. You can actually talk about business. And so it's really nice kind of coming to that now again, which is how I started my career serving these family companies and grew out of it. Well, coming back to it as really my focus of those family owned service businesses has been really fun too.
What are some things that businesses usually miss in taxes
Yeah.
and running a business?
So there's phases. I think as businesses grow, you have different challenges at different phases in different places. Those early businesses, and I'm not being critical or criticizing, I'm just observing things I've seen from early businesses. A lot of time they don't put really much thought into what are our numbers doing and how can we use our numbers to help our business. And so what you'll see a lot of times is bookkeeping, if it exists, is not being done very well. And I'll tell you, it's very hard to grow and to understand what's working in your business and not working if you don't have good data to make appropriate decisions. You can certainly grow, and there's a lot to be said for the gut check of owners know their business at a level no one else will. And so a lot of times they somewhat intuitively know, but also a lot of times if you actually look at the numbers, you can have a much clearer path forward. And sometimes you find that intuition's actually wrong. So that early stage company, early stage, I'll define as say under 500,000 top line. The biggest thing is keep good books and records. I think that's often missed. And especially when it comes to tax time, everyone wants, oh, I need to do something to save taxes. Are all your deductions recorded? Because that's the biggest miss. If you're not reconciling those accounts or someone's not doing that, often that's going to yield more tax savings than implementing a complex strategy. Not that I don't love implementing strategies, I do. It's what I do for a living, right? Taxes. But I'd rather you have good business intel, be taking the deductions you're entitled to, and then let's build strategy on top of that. So that would be my number one thing kind of in that initial phase. And then as you grow and you start to hire, it kind of changes. At that point in time, I think your numbers need to be good enough that you're asking yourself cash flow questions of what's my monthly income, what's my monthly expenses, and then can I afford this next hire? And so it somewhat changes, and hiring really becomes a lot more critical between that 500,000. Hiring is always critical, but I think it's very critical as you grow past that 500,000, because before the 500,000, as the owner, manager of the business, you're really involved with the people. So even if someone's not doing what needs to be done, you're there. You can self-correct really quickly. But as you scale and kind of past that K and maybe even past your first million, it's more about having a really great team that allows you not to be the bottleneck for decisions. And so we see that kind of occurring maybe as you grow closer to a million, but definitely over that 500, you're building the team that's going to allow you to grow. And the team you build from that 500K to a million is going to define whether you can just break through the million, no problem, or whether you're going to hit that next threshold and kind of pause as you realize maybe I don't have the team that actually gets me to the next level. So at that point, hiring becomes really crucial. And then past a million, there's a whole bunch of things, and it really just depends on where the owner wants to drive the business. So those are the two, though, that come to mind that are pretty, I'd say, universally true, at least as far as I've seen.
While you're working with your clients, are these things that you work with them on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To the extent my clients want me involved, right? So I have some clients who love picking up the phone and we walk through a lot of these challenges. And then I have other clients who say, I'm thinking about this. I'll let you know if I do it. And they call me 6 months later and said I did something. So there's kind of a spectrum. One of the things I try, it's really a differentiator at Acorn and Oak, is I require all my clients to have at least one planning session a year. I don't want it to be that you just drop your taxes off, you get your tax return. That's great. And sure, I could do that. But the reality is business unlocks, tax planning unlocks, they happen in the middle of the year when you're looking at numbers and you have time to execute if you want to change something or you want something to look different. And that's why I require all my clients at least once a year, preferably twice a year. We're talking about how are we actually doing this year? What can we do different? And a lot of times in those conversations, these things come up. So almost a little bit of a CFO light, if you will. I don't profess to be a CFO by any means, but the reality is a lot of my clients, I just have so much more depth with their numbers than they do, which is fine. Like they do their thing, whatever that may be. Numbers isn't their forte and it is mine. That when I'm looking at the numbers, they're telling me the numbers tell me different things than what the client sees when they look at the numbers. And so having those touch points just allows us that opportunity for me to say, hey, did you notice that this cost is way out of line and increased? What's going on there? Is it something we need to address, or talk to me about hiring? Yeah. So those things kind of come up when you have multiple touch points during the year.
Yeah, yeah. So you started working a franchise at the big accounting firm. So are you basically doing the same thing at Acorn and Oak?
Yes and no. So the franchise world, it's a wonderful place to be. I think as a business owner, if you don't have a clear concept of what you want to do for your business, franchise is a great place to be, because you come into a franchise system and you execute their playbook, which is a proven playbook. And as long as you can execute medium to very good, you're going to be successful in a good system. So on the franchise side, especially when I was at Plant Moran, what I was seeing is these really successful franchise that we did work for were being bought out by private equity. Private equity has discovered the franchise space and they love it because, again, you have a good manager in there, it runs very well. So private equity started coming into the space in a very big way. And these family-owned businesses were being bought out and no longer family-owned. And so this is a long story to answer your question. I apologize. So I say that because, yes, I still do some work at the franchise level. A lot of times the work I'm doing now is at the franchisee level. And that's because my focus is really on serving those single owner, family owned, husband, wife with kids businesses. And I'm not that interested in going after and trying to serve those private equity clients. Just different things necessary to serve and kind of complement. So while I do some franchise work, it's not to the level that I used to be because I'm specifically avoiding working for private equity clients at this point.
Well, private equity is kind of ugly.
It depends on the private equity. By and large, I did not love the private equity firms that I served, with two exceptions. And those two exceptions, my goodness, loved the private equity team, love what they did. Their concept was we would come in, we'd have a buyout, the owner retained some ownership, and they're really just coming in to invest into the company and then see that growth. They keep the owner and the exact same management team involved. That's not how they're looking to optimize. Love working with private equity places that did that, rather than the private equity place that comes in and says, it's our management team, this is how we run things, now it's time for you to execute our playbook. I think that has a lot of negative impact to your everyday worker. And it's sad. And is it immoral? I don't know if you can go and call it immoral, but it definitely has deeper implications. And I think those aren't being considered, and not something I want to be involved with at Acorn and Oak.
Yeah. So would you agree that the tax code is designed to favor businesses and not employees?
Absolutely. 100%.
And so why is that? And should an employee start a business on the side to take advantage of that tax code?
Yeah, a lot to unpack. Let's talk about my favorite topic, taxes. So a lot of the law is written and is very pro-business. But at the same time, I also see the tax law as a way to reward those risk takers. When you start your own business, you're taking a risk. And some of these opportunities and deductions that become available as a business, I see that as part of a reward for taking a risk. There is certainly something to be said for you're a W-2 employee. You just collect your paycheck. You don't have to worry about the management of things. There's not a lot of risk there. So understand that while, even though from a tax perspective, I think having a business is the best place to be, there is an inherent risk with that. So I don't want to be flippant about it and say everyone should be in a business, because that's not the case. Some people, they need to be W-2 workers, and that's what is best for them as a person. But if you're not one of those people that it's best for you, business is a really wonderful place. There's significant deductions. What I find a lot with my clients is not only do you have more in terms of deductions that you can take, but you can also plan things better. So one of the things I'm doing this year is, as you cross tax brackets with different clients, you can be really intentional about planning to keep you in a specific tax bracket. And so this year I'm doing some Roth conversions with my clients who may be in a 37% bracket typically. Well, this year, for various tax reasons, they fell into the 10% tax bracket. And so the philosophy for them is anything we can convert up to like a 24% tax rate is going to be significant because in the future, you're going to be back at 37%. And so for those clients, we're actually creating income by converting IRAs into Roth IRAs and paying tax on that now at 22 and 24% because their normal tax rate's 37%. And we expect in the future that's going to go up. So things like that, you can you can plan with your income or you can plan with your business deductions a lot more fluidly than you can if you're just a W-2 employee. Because a W-2 employee, what you have is that consistency of I know there's a paycheck twice a month or whatever that cadence may be with bonuses at year end if you're so lucky. As a business owner, we don't have any guarantee that there's revenue going to come in the door next month, right? Next month could be a goose egg. I'm blessed and God loves me, so it's not. But the reality is that could happen at any given time in a business. And so that risk is somewhat rewarded through the tax code and that flexibility of, okay, we can plan things and we can make some different plays. And now I'm going to circle that to your next question. Should W-2 employees have a side hustle? I think it's a wonderful idea. It kind of gives you that taste. If it's something you like, you can really double down on it. If it's a successful side hustle, like that can grow and replace your W-2 and then you can run that full time as a business. I think that's a really wonderful gateway to determining if it works for you and to unlocking some of those deductions. Now, I do want to be careful there is because any side hustle you're doing, the goal is that it's profitable, right? Or maybe if it's a nonprofit type side hustle, that might not be the goal, but let's just assume the goal is to make income. It's great that you make income, right? I would rather you make $10,000 of income and pay tax on it than you have $10,000 of loss and pay zero tax, right? So at the end of the day, you also want to look at it from a practical standpoint of you're running this thing and you're making income, which is wonderful. Yes, take advantage of the additional deductions, but understand that as you make income, you pay tax.
Yeah.
I'm going to get off my soapbox now.
Yeah. Yeah. Just losing money is not good.
Yeah, that's not what you want as business owners.
No. So on your Oak Tier services, you talk about legacy and generational wealth planning. So what do you do with clients to help them plan for the future and future generations?
Asking about all the secrets. There's a lot of different things we can do in terms of structuring. I love family partnerships. Those work really well in terms of leaving some legacy to kids. Trusts are a big part of that structuring, understanding if you're going to run into that gift tax threshold, whether you need to structure things to have an appropriate estate. Those are important considerations. I also love thinking about Roth conversions. If your retirement's set and you're really looking at, okay, my children or even my grandchildren in the future, a Roth is a really great vehicle to accomplish those tasks because you pay the tax now and then they receive it tax-free when they withdraw in the future. And to put that in perspective, it's like my father has just regular 401ks, which is fine. And when he retires, assuming some of that comes to me, my tax rate would be much higher than his tax rate is currently. So if he were to be converting those, he'd actually be paying less tax than I'll pay, assuming I inherit some of that in the future. So things like that we like to think about and just be aware of and say, okay, how do we make this possible to pass down to the next generation? And then if you pass that estate threshold, I think it's like at 32 million this year. So if God has blessed you and you have more than 32 million that you're leaving to people, at that point in time, we need to talk about structuring things in terms of businesses that we can not work around it, but we can strategically leave your children more without incurring tax to do so. So a great example of that is if you have maybe a commercial building, you're in the commercial space doing something. A really cool way that you can leave some legacy to your kids is you buy a commercial building with your kids as co-owners of that building. So your company makes the down payment, you fund it with debt, you have maybe 25% ownership to each kid, yourself, your wife, whatever the case may be. And then you move your company into that commercial building. So the company that you control is paying the rent, paying down that mortgage. And then eventually that mortgage is gone and you pass away and your children inherit this building that's completely paid off, a multi-million-dollar building. You've now done that over the course of 30 years. They can receive those assets and there's not really tax impact there. Asterisk, lots of tax impacts, but like as a general statement for our listeners, there's not tax impact. They get that building and you avoid that estate tax. So like that's a play that I really like for those high net worth individuals. It doesn't make sense for a lot of people who they don't have to worry about that. So you kind of pick the plays based on what the person's goals are and what's realistic and achievable for them and that they want to execute. Like it's a joint effort. I can bring the ideas to the table, but Greg, you could tell me, I don't like this idea at all, Isaac. And that's fine. You can table it and move on to something else. But it really is a joint conversation of what do you want the future to look like and how do you want to set it up later? Like I have plenty of clients who they leave significant income into donor advised funds when they pass away. And then that donor advised fund has an executive who kind of manages those funds and it all goes to charity at the end of the day, which is a wonderful thing to see.
Do you work with clients just in Michigan or all over?
And here's where I put my lawyer, be careful what you say hat on, Isaac. So I'm a CPA in Michigan. That's where my credential is. Michigan has a really strong CPA licensure track, and my license is recognized in many states, but it's not recognized in all states. And that's where let me be careful what I say here. So I do a significant amount of work in the Colorado area. I have a couple other states that I do that have a reciprocity with Michigan in terms of recognizing the license. But there are a few states that I don't serve clients because the state doesn't recognize the Michigan CPA. And to serve clients in those states, I would have to apply through their process as well, which I have not done.
Good. So, I saw you had a post that you said 10 years ago, I read a little book that beats the market.
Yes. Joel Greenblatt. He's my friend. I'm a man of faith. That serves me so well through so many facets of life, right? And one of the things that I think if I had to put like what's Isaac's superpower, one of my things is I can hear someone else tell a true story or I can read a true story and I have the power of faith that I can believe it's true, but not only believe it's true, believe that I can make the same result happen and I can execute and have similar success. The little book that beats the market is one of those things that I read the book. Joel Greenblatt, he's an investor. I think he manages his own hedge fund. I think it's called Gotham Funds. He wrote this book essentially to explain how stocks work to his kids, who I want to say were third or fourth grade at the time. So it's written at a very simplistic level. And I know that might seem off-putting, and I've read Benjamin Graham and I've read lots of Warren Buffett, but like this book distills all of that knowledge down in such a simple way. It's accessible for anyone to read it and understand what's happening when you invest in stocks. And after he simplifies it and distills it, he then presents what's his solution, which is called the magic formula. If you follow along and you agree that these things are important to companies and these things are an accurate measure of a company's worth, how do we quantify that to determine if a company is a good company to buy in? Well, he comes down to two primary factors and he puts those factors together to create a ranking system. And through the book, it's if this ranks in the top 30, these are stocks you should buy in. And if it's the bottom 30, those are stocks you should avoid. Like it really is as simple as that. And so he walks it through as if you're a kid and you're selling bubble gum to your classmates at school. And how do you grow that and build a business? So it's very, very approachable. I read that book a number of years ago, loved it. And at that point, I was doing quite a bit of day trading. I was into calls and puts, which are options trading. I was doing a lot of that with, some successes and some losses. On the whole, I was generally up, but it was mostly almost a wash. And I read this book and it just kind of reaffirmed that really long-term investing is the best way to go about it. And what I loved about the book is it doesn't necessarily say, oh, you have to put this out for 10 years. He's really contemplating a 1 year to maybe a 2 year hold time frame. And that intuitively made a lot of sense to me that, yes, I am interested in long-term, but it allows me to roll the portfolio. So reading through, I decided at the time, I'm going to put some funds towards executing this strategy as outlined in the book. And he's got a screener. It's a website, magicformula.com. You can go there and it screens based on the book. And so every month I go to the website for the last 10 years and I pick some of the stocks that I like. I might do a little bit of digging. I typically try to avoid biotech, again, keeping Catholic principles in mind. I try not to invest in things that I don't understand and can't inherently say. They're generally avoiding doing morally uncertain or questionable or morally wrong things. So like if I don't know and I can't make that judgment call looking at a stock, I typically avoid it. But if it's a stock that just looking at it's like, all right, I don't think there's anything really morally questionable going on, at least surface level, for the company and what the business is trying to accomplish, and I like the business as a whole, then I greenlight it and turn my portfolio. And yeah, Joel contemplates, I think he contemplates it's a 30% average over 10 years. I've ran it for 10 years now and my average was 25%. So not quite as good as he promised,
Well,
but
that's
but
really
again,
good.
it's one of those things of like, I just had faith that it'd work out and I'd execute it over a long period of time and it's worked out.
So what do you think is changing in the accounting finance world?
There's lots of change happening in the accounting world right now. I think the two biggest looming components that most people are worried about, maybe three. Private equity has come into the accounting profession in a big way. A lot of CPAs, when a private equity comes in and buys the firm, they're being told they can't use their CPA credential and like email signatures, and they're not signing things as CPAs anymore because the firm's now owned by private equity. So that's a huge uproar right now in the profession. And then private equity just changing how to serve clients is an issue. It's an issue and it's an opportunity. There's some things that private equity has certainly identified that need to be changed. So props to them for that. The other kind of looming thing we see in the profession is most practitioners, I want to say it's made up numbers always on the spot, right? But I think it's like upwards of 70% of practitioners are nearing retirement age or will retire in the next 5 to 10 years. And so we see this looming cliff that CPAs on the whole are going to be retiring, and we're going to have this mass, if you will, exodus. And there's not enough new people going after the credential or pursuing accounting to fill those seats. And it's going to create this significant demand for all these clients who their CPA retired and now have nowhere to go. And there's a lot of concern about how do we serve that demand and kind of offer great service to these people when volume in terms of workload is about to go crazy. So that's also a concern, and the pipeline issue of just making sure there's more people coming into the profession. And then the third piece, which I think everyone's talking about in every industry, is how is AI going to disrupt what we're doing? And to me, it's just progress. And you have to be able to adapt and be nimble and incorporate it into what you're doing to the extent that you can. And as it changes things, seeing it as a tool and trying to use it as a tool appropriately inside of the profession. I see it more as an opportunity, but I'll tell you, there's probably a lot of people who are going to be left behind who don't use it by people like me and other people that I work with who are going to adopt it and try to plug it in where we can.
Yeah, yeah. So what would you say is the vocation of a business leader?
Is the vocation of the business leader?
Yeah.
So I have a couple answers. The business, and I think kind of vocation as a general, as the business leader, you're really called to go out and I think it's Rerum Novarum that looks at business honestly as a whole. You're part of your community and you're really trying to just help that community along and just pass those blessings, if you will, down to others. So that I think as a concept is the primary focus of the leader. Where I'm at right now, I don't have a lot of employees yet. So my impact there is still pretty small. And so to me, it's about creating that culture that you can really experience love through the culture. I think that's important, and I know lots of businesses they don't call it that, but that's really what it is. Is how can we love this person for everything that they are, as we're called to do as Catholics, Christians even, and look out and try to have them become the best version of themselves. And so I think that's maybe more of my calling right now. Like large scale, certainly I want to have kind of that so social impact. It's just not there quite yet.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, culture is completely important. I mean, was it culture eats strategy for breakfast or something like that? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I've heard that, and I think it's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're going to have loyal employees if the culture is great. If the culture is horrible, no one wants to work there.
Yeah, and I think openness to change is important too.
Hmm.
Because my concept of culture, yeah, this is what I'm trying to instill and kind of have as the Acorn and Oak way. But there's also that knowledge of I'm one person and I don't know everything. And so you have to be open to change and open to really listening. I think that's crucial as a leader is that openness to opinions that differ from yours and then willingness to say, okay, my way might not be the best way. Maybe that humility is a better word. There's having that humility to understand I'm just one person, whatever business leaders are out there, you're just one person. and your way's not always the best way. And especially when it comes to culture, maybe I dictate something, which I try not to dictate things, but it happens. And if that's not good for the culture at whole, having the humility to change that. I pray I do, and I pray that my team, as my team grows, has the courage to tell me when I've erred.
Yeah, well, that's important. So where can people go to find out more about you and your services?
Yeah, so my website's a great place, Acorn and Oak, PLLC.com. That's obviously the business site, so very official. Otherwise, I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit. I try to post there every week and love interacting with people inside of the comments. So if you're on LinkedIn, look me up there. The saint in my name, I'm trying to remember if it has a period or not. But if you do Isaac and
I'll
Acorn
put
and
a
Oak, it
link
should
in
pop up.
the show notes. Yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes for sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you'd like to talk?
Nothing that comes to mind. Thank you for having me on the podcast today and just letting me share my story.
You
It's been
bet. It's been
fun.
a pleasure. Yeah. Very informative. So thank you. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Vocation Business Leader Podcast. We hope you found inspiration as we explore the powerful union of faith and business. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share it, and leave a review. Until next time, may God guide your work and help you witness His love in all you do. God bless.